Yeah.
I hit a button. They're like, nothing recorded.
Ooh. Well, that was educational, but it didn't go anywhere. Okay, ready?
I'm ready.
Dr. Boyd.
Shannon.
What's up, buddy?
What's up, bro?
I'm very excited.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad to be here.
I can't contain myself, and I got this cup of coffee. It might get crazy.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, first thing I want to do is I want to introduce you as my doctor.
Yeah.
And you live in Phoenix?
Yeah,
Okay, based out of Phoenix, and you have clients all over the U.S.
I do.
Are you able to name a few?
Some. I mean, there's some that
Some.
I can. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's, privacy issues and everything. And then there's some of my clients that they just don't care. They're just out there anyway. So they're like, whatever. You know? So those that I can share is I take care of Garrett J. White, Brad Lee, you, of course, Brandon Dawson. Who else can I say? Off the top of my head, that's about all I can say.
You know what? That's fine.
Yeah.
I think most people know who those guys are.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of CEOs, former professional athletes, influencers, and such. Andy Elliott, Andy and Jackie Elliott. There's a lot of folks that prefer to keep their health on that side, just kind of like on the down low.
No shit, man. Yeah, no shit. And speaking of that, like, what does your program look like as far as like what do you do with your clients? Like, where do you start? Where do you meet them at? And then what's the end goal? Let's just talk about like an average.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the premise of it, it's just logical is really what it is. So we start off with an executive physical, and the executive physical that I have is called the Ultimate Human Analysis for a reason. It's because it truly is. Like, we do extensive labs, extensive imaging. There really isn't another program that compares, and I intentionally made it that way. Like, there's a bunch of executive physical programs that are out there, but none that cater to the same folks that we do. Because the reality is, when you're dealing with like high-level entrepreneurs, when you're dealing with like folks that are very, very high achieving and such, it's different. Like the stress and the strain that they're under, that folks like you are under, it's very, very different compared to someone who has like a 9-to-5 job, or even just has a stressful job. Like, let me give you an example. Okay, if you look at aneurysms, particularly aortic aneurysms. So the aorta is the main blood vessel in the body. It comes off the heart and distributes blood throughout the entire body. So if you look at the percentage of aortic aneurysms that occur in like the total population, so you look at this bell-shaped curve, you see that it's very, very small. However, and this is based on the hundreds of patients that I've had and done scans on and so forth and so on in this particular program. I've taken care of tens of thousands of patients over my entire career. But in terms of with my program Blind Spot, if you look at the hundreds of patients that have come through, that's actually a pretty common thing that you see in very driven, high-achieving individuals. Why? Because the stress and the strain that they're under compared to whole population is very, very different. So we're talking not even 1%ers. It's like the fraction of percenters that there are at the top. It's like these are the folks that build the companies, that build the programs, that build all the things that then go employ, collectively hundreds of thousands or millions of people. Mm-hmm. So it's just a different set of demands. So what we do is we go and we do extensive scans, extensive labs, trying to find problems when they're small before they ever get out of hand in the first place. Mm-hmm. And then we find what we find, address those issues, and say, okay, look, what do you want to create in the next 1 year, the next 3 years, the next 5 years? Like, who do you have to become in order to make that happen? Because someone who's, a $3 million a year earner that wants to become a $6 million a year earner, for example, those are two different guys. It's a different level of stress and strain. And the higher the income amount, the more responsibilities, the more strain that happens. So we literally reverse engineer like what has to happen. Like, do you need to add muscle mass? Do you need to sleep better? Do you need to improve your sex life? Do you need to all those things?
I think all those things are a must everywhere, though.
For sure.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like starting at a place and then ending up in another place.
So a lot of people don't even realize that they're only working at a fraction of their potential.
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And I know recently, a few months ago, I had a scan and blood work and everything done with you, and after it was done, I remember you told me, you're like, Shannon, you can go hard for the next 5 years. Just you're good, man.
Nothing's
You're
going to
healthy.
pop. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't have any of that, like, signs of that possible aortic aneurysm that you're talking about. Yeah.
I'm
God, that's
assuming,
terrifying.
I'm assuming since you're asking me this, I can share.
Oh, you can share anything more. Yeah.
Cool.
Please. Anything to help, you know? Yeah. I don't give a fuck. I'm an open book, bro. I wear it on my sleeve. Yeah. But yeah, I remember before I went to do this, I was like I was like nervous, a little apprehensive. And then of course, Andy, my friend Andy Elliott, he's the one that connected us. And I remember him and I talking about it. And then he sent you my contact and you reached out to me. I was like, oh, cool, that's Boyd. All right, sweet. Before I did it, I was like fucking nervous as shit. I was like, God, man, what if they find cancer or this or blah, 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 blah. Holding on to that worry is stupid. So I did it, got out of the way. And then I was like, wow, actually, it's like a weight lifted off your shoulders.
Yeah.
And that weight on your shoulders is an impediment to your success.
100%.
Yeah. So, man, that's really encouraging. So when you get a patient and they do the scan, they go through a couple machines, they do blood work, and then you take them somewhere to their house or wherever they're at or they're staying, and you break it all down for them. You do the blood work quarterly. Mm-hmm. That way you can stay on top of, the differences. And especially if you see something that like, hey, we probably should do an adjustment here. Let's do this. And then you implement the supplement or whatever it is they need to do. And then you can go back to that quarter and say, hey, look, you're doing it. Data, right? Writing it. Let's take a plan. You write it down on paper. No, that's great. And how long have you been a doctor?
Oh, geez. God, now I have to stop and think about it. So what year is it? 2024? Oh my God, it's been 25 years.
25 years.
God, it's going by fast.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yes. So, and when you went to high school, you got out and you said, oh, I'm going to go be a doctor, or?
It was one of those things ever since I was a little kid, actually. Yeah. So I was like, probably about 5. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you the abridged story so this wouldn't be like an 8-hour podcast. But so my dad wasn't around until I was probably about 7 or so. So, and my mom was a nurse that she would work nights. She was an ICU nurse that worked nights. And so that means during the day.
Intensive care unit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
during the night.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. So
bless her heart.
Yeah. So she worked really hard. And so the majority of the day, like I was actually like raised by my grandfather. Right. And so, and that situation was complicated too, because him and my grandmother had gotten divorced. So I would hang out with him and like this in his trailer. And he had like this, he lived in like this like shitty trailer this is in South Florida, right? Now for a kid, a trailer is fantastic because it's like kid-sized, right? So I had like this little bed, like the little sleeper area in the top part. I had like this little bedroom up there, and then during the day, I'd be like running around the trailer park and everything, like knew everybody was there. And
it sounds familiar.
It was South Florida.
That's where I grew up in trailer, 11 years old.
Yeah, and it was
Virginia.
Right? So it's like, there's like, you find like, I remember one of the things I loved to do after it would rain, there were like these, you'd find like old tires and there'd be like tadpoles swimming in the tires. You'd be like, go and get a stick and put the tadpoles. Like, it was great. Like it was, as a kid, absolutely fantastic. So that's kind of like what I was like raised with and everything. So I had this really close relationship with my grandfather. And I was probably about 6 or so when he had like a massive heart attack, almost died. And I remember going and visiting him in the same intensive care unit that my mom worked in. So like, seeing him with all like the hoses and IV lines and all that and everything. And we used to visit her often and such when she was at work. So like, growing up with that, like being in like a hospital setting and everything, it was like comforting to me because it associated with my mom, So it was like, it was normal to like, sometimes we'd like go and while she was on shift, like go have dinner with her and everything. And you'd have to like walk through the ICU. So you'd see all these people on ventilators and all this other stuff, kind of like the smell of rubbing alcohol and all that.
Oh, yeah.
So it was very comfortable. So it's one of these things where like medically, I think I was always kind of inclined to go down that road in the first place. And there really wasn't anything else I was interested in throughout life.
Good.
Yeah.
You had a dream early on and you chased it.
Yeah, I chased it down.
So going back a little bit, you said something about your grandfather having a heart attack nearly killed him, right? And he was how old?
Oh, I mean, he was old to me, but realistically, he was probably like in his like early 60s.
Early 60s?
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you have any, do you have anything that you would probably talk about as far as heart attacks and what causes them, and the maybe the demographic of based on what people eat and what in your research, because there's so many people that talk shit about red meat and say that's what causes heart attacks and blah 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 blah, and I'm like, actually, I think there's something else. And so, what, in your opinion, professional doctor opinion, what's the number one cause of heart attacks aside from like smoking, which that's a big one, right?
That is a big one, yeah. It's multifactorial, meaning there's a bunch of things that lend to it. I would say probably the number one thing is what I call the SAD diet, Standard American Diet.
Standard American diet. What does that look like?
I mean, it's like processed foods, right? So processed foods, high calorie, high carbohydrates, relatively low nutrient quality. So anything out of a bag, anything out of a box, which
The middle aisles of the grocery store,
for sure.
And then so when people are feeding their kids cereal from a box, they're just basically doing them a disservice from the get-go.
It's so messed up, man. Like you think about, I think about, when I was a kid, right? So it's like you had like cereal in the morning with some milk,
Yeah,
or maybe a Pop-Tart or something,
Yeah.
right? Both things out of a box, right? The whole thing of drinking milk in the first place. So you're drinking breast milk from an animal, right? So it's like the whole, we can go down that rabbit hole, but like the dairy industry, like that whole thing was basically a creation.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Especially skim milk and whatever, or
Just like milk in general. Like, would you drink like, breast milk from like
Gosh, I don't even want to think about it.
would you drink monkey breast milk?
I don't think so.
Right? So, but for a cow, it's like, we're like, oh yeah, that's just milk. That's what it is. It's breast milk from a cow.
Is that why it's common that milk shows up in people as lactose intolerant or allergic? Because I'm technically mildly allergic to milk.
Yeah.
And I love it, hate it. Like I like it, just like I like it. Like, oh man, yeah, it tastes good. But
well, it's like if you're gonna have like some chocolate chip cookies,
dip it in milk, yeah.
Right? You want some milk with your chocolate chip cookies, but if you look at, and this has started to change now, but if you look at like what the standard food pyramid was when we were kids, like dairy was like number one, right? You had like dairy on there. You had like
grains,
all these grains that they came from fortified cereals and stuff. And basically, what it was this industry that was made to sell us shit. Right?
Right. So I'm not a conspiracy theorist when I talk about.
No, this is
cool.
No,
so a doctor has established that this is real. So,
since we're going down this road, right? And I'll come back to the whole.
And you're just not a normal doctor. Like, you actually look into food and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, So I'm an MD. I'm a medical doctor. So I was trained in very traditional allopathic setting.
Got it.
Okay. Around the time of when, 2019, 2020, when COVID hit and everything, I was working as a hospital doctor. So I was on the front lines as the epidemic was hitting and was basically learning in real time, like, how do you deal with all this and such. And something happened. It's kind of like seeing the Matrix, if you will, where I realized I'm like, it's like the majority of these things can be prevented. Like, I'm seeing all these sick folks and everything that, whatever somebody's opinion is about COVID, not going into that, but it's like, you have these folks that they were already pretty sick, and then they got this infection, and that just kind of pushed them over the edge. So it's like, well, folks didn't need to be that ill to begin with, if they would have taken preventative measures and taken responsibility for their health.
Now we're getting deep.
Like, if they would be responsible for themselves, right, and actually take care of themselves, they would never end up with diabetes, COPD, in some instances, a lot of instances, cancer, heart disease, et cetera, et cetera.
And describe for everybody what COPD is. It's a lung disorder, right?
Yeah, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which 90% of the time is caused by smoking. So it's like there's all these things that are behaviors, right? That if you would have implemented behavioral change early on, then folks wouldn't be so deconditioned physically and mentally that they would, have something small take them out.
Wow.
Right. So it's like I made this realization then, and I was like, man, you know what? Like, I'm actually part of the problem. Like, I'm a cog in the machine,
Why is that?
Because I felt at that point, like being as a hospital doctor, I was just really rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic.
Yeah.
So it's like, what if if I could wave a magic wand and say, you know what if I could do things the way I think it should be done and start a business doing that and completely go against the entire system, which is built around like taking insurance and things like that. Like, what would that look like? So it was this David and Goliath type thing that I figured I'm going to fail. But I'm never going to know if I don't take the chance. So that's what I did.
You had a calling.
Yeah, I really did.
And you identified yourself as part of the problem because you knew you had something that could be a solution by implementing prevention.
Yeah, early enough on.
Okay, so what you're saying is now your premise to what you do is to prevent guys and girls who work their freaking asses off from dying for unnecessary reasons.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, you can't take care of everybody. Like, you can't save the entire world. But if I can take care of folks that are
making an impact,
then
you're going to spread your knowledge.
Exactly.
You're doing the good work, Doc. I love that.
Thank you, brother.
I love it. So, man, so you're saying that the vid could have been handled a lot different?
No shit.
Yeah.
That's a biggie.
So, what do you know about the vaccine that they were giving people?
I don't know much about it. I don't think anybody does in reality. There's a lot of theories.
Has it been actual FDA approved yet, or is it still only FDA approved for emergency use only?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a weird one too. Because I remember having a conversation with somebody talking about it being approved, and I said, actually, I don't think it is, and we looked it up, and then I saw his face turn white.
Well, I can tell you this much. So I was working in the hospital when it wasn't released to the public yet, right? So
wait, the vaccine was out before it was released to the public.
Yeah.
But it was in the trials still, or anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they had a pretty brief trial period. So this is what happened. So we're in the thick of it, right? I'll paint the picture for you.
Yeah.
So we're in the thick of it. This is early 2020. You have when the typical case that would come in that would roll into the emergency room, it'd be like grandma who had diabetes, high blood pressure, and COPD or something, right? And she wasn't feeling well. She wasn't quite acting herself. She felt like she was having labored breathing and such. And so she comes in the emergency room. You check oxygen saturation. She's in the low 80s or anything. She's huffing and puffing pretty hard, right? Mm-hmm. You put her on 2 liters of oxygen. She pops right back up into in the 90s. She's 92, 94, something like that. She's chilling. And you're like, oh, great. Grandma must be fine. We'll just leave her on oxygen for a little while. 3 hours go by. She fucking tanks. And all of a sudden, no matter how much oxygen you put on her, she's not breathing, right? She starts more labor breathing. And once someone is long enough, they get tired enough that they just stop. So you have to intubate. Well, now she's intubated, right? And you're basically waiting for her lungs to, repair themselves enough that they'll bounce back. Ordinarily, with things like pneumonia and even some viruses and so forth, you put them on, antivirals, or you put them on antibiotics or what have you, and someone bounces back after a while. Well, remember, we didn't have any of particular antivirals for COVID then, because we didn't, this was all brand new. So we were just learning how to diagnose it in the first place. The kits were just coming out. Well, there was such a minimal amount of kits for healthcare providers that you blew through the kits after a while. So then you had to make a clinical diagnosis. And the clinical diagnosis is, what does it look like? And then we do an x-ray. COVID is interesting. It has on x-ray, it looks like these big cotton balls. And it doesn't, there's nothing else that has that same appearance. So after a while, we became, COVID specialists on the front line, because you're figuring it out as you go. And so after a while, they come in, you're like, this is probably what it is. Just take a chest x-ray. Yep, that's what it is. You could predict, all right, they're good for now. Probably about 3-4 hours, they're going to crash. Right? So that gave you at least a little bit of time to go, do we have a ventilator? Do we have this and that? You know, if it was somebody who was like already sick or on hospice or what have you, then you're talking with them and the family, like, do you want to go on a ventilator in the first place? If not, you know, the end is coming soon. You know, so it got very real very quickly. And we were stacking bodies. I mean, and most folks don't know this, but I mean, every hospital has a morgue. It's usually like a small, like, you know, room about this size.
Yeah.
Right. And after a while, the morgue gets full. So they're literally stacking bodies in the hallway. Those body bags were stacked up right next to the doctor's lounge and such. So it was very, very real. And
No,
it was
yeah.
it was a weird time as a physician, because if you looked on the news, everybody was dying, which wasn't true. If you looked on social media, nobody was dying because they're like, oh, this is a hoax. And then there was the reality of the situation, you know? So it was a weird time for sure.
Give me a percentage of people that died from COVID that were pre-existing conditions.
Probably somewhere in the high teens, like low 20s, something like that.
High teens, low 20s?
Yeah. So like in terms of like percentage. And it's like, you know, majority of people were, I didn't have anybody that was like.
So wait, so you're saying 80% of the people who died of COVID didn't have pre-existing conditions?
No. I'm saying like folks that came in that had pre-existing conditions, of those folks that came in, it was probably maybe like 15, 20%.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
They okay.
And
Gotcha.
a lot of folks bounced back.
Okay.
You know, folks that were really pretty sick to begin with. Like I said, like they were kind of like on the ledge and they just needed something to push them over the edge. And that was that something.
Like if you're 300 pounds, you're above 60 years old and you have heart disease already, you're probably not a good candidate.
Yeah, I mean, I had the youngest guy I had die was 25, but he was like type 1 diabetic. He probably weighed like 500 pounds.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, he had like, you know, he was 25 with heart disease already, and, you know, tremendously high cholesterol and all this other stuff. And
so you haven't. And I don't ask this for any other reason except just so it's out there. Mm-hmm. You haven't seen any children die of COVID in your hospital.
I haven't, but at that hospital they didn't. It wasn't a pediatric hospital.
Okay, yeah. That's the thing that fucked me up.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know anybody. I've only personally known one person who died of COVID. It was my wife's uncle, and he was 300 pounds, double heart attack already. Didn't take care of himself, and he was in his 60s, and he was sick, and he just refused to go to the hospital, and then eventually, like, he was green,
yeah,
and they took him, and the oxygen meter said it was 50%.
Yeah,
I was like, God, and yeah, he died. It's hypoxia, right? The lack of oxygen.
Yeah,
hypoxia. So. Explain what hypoxia is and the damage it does to your body just in general and how it's associated with other diseases, if you will.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, exactly that. Hypoxia is like the lack of oxygen, right? So, you know, the air that we're breathing right now is only 20% oxygen.
Right.
Right. So it's mostly nitrogen, but that oxygen component is the most important component for our cellular machinery. And it's weird to think, just like, you know, here we are like talking as humans, right? But we're a collection of billions and billions of cells that all do different things and that are all have the timing is just right to do all of those different things. And oxygen is the essential piece of all of that. So within our blood binds oxygen via hemoglobin and transports it to all those different tissues to get to the different cells to where it needs to go.
And iron helps with that?
Yeah, that's part of the process in order to build the heme molecules in order to transport oxygen in the first place. So, you know, it's been said that the presence of oxygen is the lack or absence of disease.
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
Yeah, which is true on many levels. You know, but the bottom line is, like, if you think of it as like this giant series of events or reactions that have to occur in order for something as simple as you blinking your eye. Like, it's not just the oxygen, it's all the little components that have to happen in order for the simplest things for us to do, like take a breath, you know, to all occur in the first place. So if you have any kind of interruption of any of those elements along the way, then that's when things begin to break down.
Is it true that people who exercise commonly, often, are way less likely to have disease than people who don't?
Yeah.
Period.
Absolutely. Like if you could look, if somebody was going to listen to this podcast and say, okay, listen, great. Like, give me one thing. Give me one thing that I can do that's going to like make the biggest difference. And I'll tell you right off the bat, it's your fitness.
So exercise is the biggest contributor to health, right?
Yes.
So that's the contribution that you want to start with, period.
That's it. And then you can break it down and go, okay, well, what does that mean, fitness? Like, because that could mean a bunch of different things, right? So it's like, does that mean you can go run a half marathon? Does that mean you can fight off an attacker? Does that mean you can, bench press 200 pounds? Like, fitness can mean a bunch of different things. So that's when I would further break it down, is between men and women, right? So
before we go there, you do have a difference between men and women when it comes to fitness?
For sure.
Okay, sweet. All right. Yeah.
And then furthermore, it's like, what's your body type? Because you have some folks that are built like a linebacker.
Yeah.
You have other folks that are smaller frame.
Yeah.
And so with that, between men and women, because men and women are different when it comes to hormone cascade and all of those other things. So that means your body ages in different ways.
Edward, write down hormones for later, because we're going to go there too.
Yeah,
Thank you,
sure.
Dr. Boyd. Thank you. Go ahead.
So if you look at a woman, for example, so like let's take a 35-year-old woman that is, smaller frame. Maybe she weighs 120 pounds. She's
Like my wife.
yeah. So let's take your wife, for example, right?
Yeah.
So like just based on her frame and so forth and so on. And I mean, I know your wife, she's a patient of mine, like know her well, right? Yeah. She's super fit.
Yeah.
Right. So because she's super fit, her chances of developing osteoporosis in her 70s are less. However, just by her body frame, she's going to have to make sure that she has a good, clean diet that's nutrient rich, that her vitamin D and calcium levels are appropriate and such, and that she's doing heavy lifting throughout her life, so that way she continues to build bone density and decrease the risk of osteoporosis.
I love that you said that. I was going to ask about that because I wanted to specify that there is a correlation with lifting weights and keeping the bone density.
100%. Yeah. It's a strain. It's literally like, you think about it. When you go and you deadlift a bar, right? So what's happening? You're pulling on this bar. What are you pulling with? Muscles. What are the muscles attached to? Bone. So as the ligaments and tendons and everything are being strained against the bone, the muscle grows, the bone grows.
So so it's collectively. Mm-hmm. Right. That makes sense too, because but the muscle doesn't grow at the same rate or scale or the bone doesn't grow at the same rate and scale as the muscle, but I guess I can say scale. It makes the adjustment it needs to keep up with the muscle.
Correct.
Awesome. Yeah. So it starts with the movement. Mm-hmm. It starts with the brain, starts with the movement, and then the brain's going, oh, we're doing this thing that we need to build more muscle. And oh, by the way, the bone, you have to come with us. The bone's like, cool, give me stuff.
And then you have to make sure that you have a nutrient-dense diet.
Nutrient-dense. So when you say nutrient-dense, you mean stuff that nutrients. You're not going to find that in cereal.
Correct.
You're not going to find it in soda.
I keep things as simple as possible, right? So I tell folks this: not out of a bag, not out of a box, and made by God.
Ooh.
Right?
Yes, sir.
So if you keep to those three things, chances are you're going to get the nutrients that you need. There's sometimes when it comes to micronutrients that can be off a little bit, particularly if you're keeping to a higher protein diet because you're trying to add muscle mass, which is very important and everything. So that can throw that off from time to time. There's some folks genetically that can't absorb some nutrients as well as others. So that's where it comes time where it's like, okay, so some supplementation, you don't need to supplement for everything, but some supplementation can come in handy, particularly when it comes to vitamins and minerals and things like that. So
I love supplements.
Yeah,
and I felt better since I started taking supplements.
Yeah, you do, and it's usually because energetically, you'll actually literally feel better energetically because you're actually getting what your body needs. And really what you're doing is restoring balance. It's not folks are always looking for, well, what can give me more energy? It's not going to be another energy drink. That's just
no, that's actually going to kill you in the long run.
Yeah, that's quick, fast. It's like a Band-Aid, So if you want to actually look at what can actually move the needle, then it's that you're exercising appropriately, that you're eating very, very well, which is like 90% of it is our diet. And then, some supplementation and then good sleep.
Yes. Oh, I preach that too. Sleep. When you're only getting 4 hours of sleep a night, maybe 5 or
Still?
6. That's.
Is that still what you're at?
No. I'm doing better. Thank you.
God,
yeah,
yeah.
no. When you're someone who's only getting 4 to 5, maybe 6 hours of sleep a night, they wake up tired every day. That's gonna you're not able to build, because when you sleep is when your body rebuilds.
Yeah.
It does the maintenance.
Yeah.
And mostly when you sleep. I know there's some that's done while you're awake, right? However, it needs that sleep for that system reset.
For sure.
And some people are freaks. They only need 6 hours. I do about 6.5 at least. I need at least. I like my sweet spot. I like that whoop. I like that whoop strap. You got the gold.
Yeah, bro. There you go.
Yeah. 6.5 is my sweet spot. And then sometimes I see that I slept 8 hours. I'm like, whoa, fucking miracle. And I woke up, I'm like, why did I bushy tail? But when I get to 4 and 5 hour nights, like I can feel it. And then my whoop says, hey, dumbass, you're not recovering. Like, we know you're bullshitting us.
Yeah.
So man, we're covering. Oh, this is gonna be good, man. Oh man, I can go to so many places. All right. So what's the difference between a piece of red meat and a piece of kale? Or the equivalent of the amount of kale you would need to eat to get the same benefit from the red meat?
I'd have to look up kale protein content, which I don't think is much.
Yeah.
Can you guys fact check? Yeah, just kind of Google it and see. Well, I'll tell you what. While they're doing that, because that's a really good question. While they're doing that, we started to talk about men and women.
Oh yeah.
We'll finish off with men.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So like for men, right, and we'll say particularly like men as we're aging, right, because the whole like growth phase from like the time that we're boys to become teenagers and then into young men, it's like there's this whole growth phase and such. But
puberty.
yeah, once you pass through puberty and everything, once guys hit about age 25, like we grow until we're about age 25, just very, very slowly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
So then after that, it's amazing if you think about it. So like 25 to 35 is really kind of like our real prime time, And then once you hit 35, then things actually start to drop. Like testosterone levels begin to drop, muscle mass starts to erode, all of these things. So and then you don't really notice it until you're in your 40s, where you're like, hey, wait a minute, I used to be able to eat a sleeve of Oreos and like nothing like would happen. And now you do that and you're like, my pants don't fit. So that's when metabolism starts to really like start to slow down and everything is really once we hit our 40s. So that's kind of when guys start paying more attention. I know that's what happened to me. Like all of a sudden I looked in the mirror when I was like, 38, 39 years old. And I'm like, who's this fat bastard in front of me? Like,
Oops.
Yeah. What the heck? Like, I didn't pay attention for a couple of years and then here we are, So like particularly for guys, so weight training is incredibly important. And
Yeah, weight training is important for men because I'm going to come out and fucking say it. We're meant to lift. We're meant to build. We're meant to carry. That's how we're engineered.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's also what controls our metabolism. So when we go back to what we were talking about before with the SAD diet, the standard American diet, which is mostly carbohydrate and fat and very little protein. Well, think about it. You need protein in order to build muscle.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that means you need to be lifting. You need to be lifting heavy things. You need to be eating high protein. You need to be moving on a regular basis, not being sedentary. Right. And when you do those things, then it's like shocking that, wow, I feel a whole lot better. Like I look better, I feel better, I sleep better, and have better sex. So it's like you put those together, and inevitably what happens nowadays, because we're not hunter-gatherers so much anymore,
Right.
Our version of hunter and gathering is go kill it in business.
Right. We got to emulate it. We got to emulate what we're engineered for to keep the evolution.
That's right.
Yeah.
So when you put all those things together, what happens to a guy? He makes more money.
Well, that's why I do jujitsu. I fight.
Yeah.
For fun, hobby. And it's not only is it, physically beneficial, it's mentally beneficial.
Yeah.
And you network. But do you have that fact there? Did you check that out? So if you're trying to get your protein from kale, you're more likely to kill yourself than you are to do any good. Oh, okay.
In order to get, which you're going to piss off some vegans with this. But
I don't care. I'm here for the truth, but yes, go ahead.
In order to, and there are some like I know there's like some NFL players that are like vegan, and
It's not easy. There's vegans that do it in a way that's fucking, it's a lot of work.
so I really didn't understand the whole vegan thing, right? And I was like, you know what? There's got to be something to it. I'm going to try it. So I did it for 6 months, hardcore.
Whoa.
And I was like, I want to do this in a scientific way. I'm gonna check my labs before and after. I'll tell you now, my cholesterol was never better. You know, like my genes, like I'm genetically prone to heart disease. So so it's like I have to watch pretty close. And even when I'm being really, really good, like my cholesterol can run higher, right? So I put myself on a statin medication in order to help lower it. But I didn't need the statin or anything when I was hardcore vegan, right? But life was freaking miserable. Like, so I ate a lot of TVP, textured vegetable protein, which is the most synthesized stuff that there is. Like plants go through this extensive, basically chemical process to extrapolate the protein out so that you have this concentrated plant protein that you can buy that's dried. It kind of looks like jerky as you dry it, and then you rehydrate it when you cook it. If you don't flavor it well, which I'm not a very good cook, if you don't flavor it well, it basically tastes like wet cardboard, you know? So like I was trying to eat as much TVP as I could and tofu and things like that in order to maintain muscle mass. And dude, I dropped a ton of muscle mass, you know?
So you lost muscle?
Oh, tremendous. Yeah. Like it was weird. I was like skinny fat. So like I had like
the visceral fat?
Well, I had like a spare tire.
The layer. It would never go away.
That wouldn't go away because I was eating a ton of carbohydrates and everything. And then like my biceps looked like my forearms. So I was like this weird skinny fat thing.
Just frail.
Yeah. Like it didn't feel very masculine for me. Right. So then after I finished that experiment, I'm like, you know, let's go do bodybuilding instead. And I swung the exact opposite direction instead, you know? And so, yeah.
Well, I thank you for that feedback.
Yeah, you're welcome. Real world feedback for you.
Back in the day, I went to a naturopathic doctor. We were talking a long time ago. And he says, hey, I want you to try something. And I said, okay. He's like, you're going to eat nothing but vegetables for 2 weeks. Because I was kind of having some things going on, and turns out there was other stuff. But I was like, all right, gosh, that sounds terrible. And I did. And I felt like shit all the time. And then I come back to him. And he was like, how you feel? I was like, not good, dude. I feel worse than before. He's like, yeah. Now you're going to eat nothing but meat for 2 weeks. Nothing but meat. He was like, don't worry. You're perfectly healthy. You can do this. You don't need to have an evaluation to make sure it's not going to do something. And I did that. And I felt better, but I still felt a little lethargic. I felt lethargic at first. And I came back and he says, how do you feel? I said, I feel better. You know, I feel more normal. I think that's the word I could use. And he's like, okay. He's like, now I want you to introduce some carbs instead of just meat. Some carbs. And he said, sweet potatoes. I was like, all right. He's like, you can eat sweet potatoes and nothing but sweet potatoes with your meat. Tell me how you feel in 2 weeks. And I did that. And I didn't even get the 2 weeks. Like 2 days, I was like, I called him. I was like, Josh, I feel amazing, dude. He was like, bro, here's the thing. You need protein in the fucking story. Your body doesn't break down vegetables very well. You need a complex carb that's a little bit easier to break down. Sweet potatoes are a lot easier to break down than broccoli and carrots and such, right?
Sure.
And oh, by the way, that sweet potato has like 80 nutrients in it, micronutrients that are really good for you. And he says, I bet you poop good too. And I was like, yeah. He's like, there you go. So he helped me find like what worked for me.
Yeah, that's good.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think there are some people who can't eat vegetables at all, and they feel really good when they eat meat, and they do well. Dr. Jordan Peterson, he went on he eats nothing but red meat, and he lost all of his weight. He's more clear. It feels good. Like, I think it's what works for people. But it's just funny how we're engineered to eat meat, yet there's this blasphemous fucking opinion from people about it. And I say, hey, you know what? I love you, but don't tell me what works best for me because it works for you. And yes, there are people that are vegan that can do it. I also think it's about where you're from, where you come from on the earth, how well you construct it. You got to get the protein. You got to get the micronutrients, and the macronutrients. They make it work for them. Good. But like you said, if you're walking around frail with a spare tire, well, you're not, something's up.
Yeah.
Something's up.
Yeah.
But let's talk about hormones.
Sure.
For instance, I'll go ahead and like throw myself under the bus here. I take DHEA. Can you explain to everybody what that is?
DHEA?
DHEA, 25 milligrams.
Yeah, so it's basically like a precursor for a bunch of other different hormones that can be made from it.
And it's men produce it?
Well, both men and women produce it.
Got it. Okay, got it. Yeah. And does it help boost testosterone?
I mean, it's one of the early components. So think of it kind of like if you're putting together like a Lego set, right? Where at the Legos, like you look on the box and it's supposed to look like a sports car, right? Well, you need to have like some basic things that every Lego set's going to have in order for it to look like whatever it's going to look like.
Got it.
So DHEA is one of those building blocks in which to do it. So yes, it can increase testosterone, can also increase estrogen, it can increase other hormones as well. But you have to, it's a precursor.
Got it. Got it. Awesome. And then what about vitamin D?
Vitamin D is a pretty amazing vitamin, actually. And so there are tons of studies have been done on it. Majority of people are low on it.
Because they stay inside all the time.
There's that. There's it also like, kind of, we talked before about milk. Like, milk is fortified with vitamin D. So it's got extra vitamin D in it. It basically manufacturers squirt some vitamin D in there. So it gives you some more vitamin D. So that's, there's, as more and more folks, drinking milk on a regular basis is not as popular as it used to be. As that's happened, there's been, more vitamin D deficiencies and so forth. So if you're not eating like a good nutrient rich diet or you're not taking a vitamin D supplement, then, and you're not like, going out in the sun very much.
Yeah.
Right. So then all those things collectively together lower vitamin D levels.
Yeah. Me being someone that lives in the Northwest, I have to take at least 5,000 IUs, vitamin D3 daily to keep my vitamin D up.
Yeah, but then when you come to Arizona, then you just like you don't need much sunlight actually. Like you don't. A lot of folks are like, oh, you have to.
I heard an hour a morning.
Dude, not even.
Not even.
Like you need, in order to actually charge vitamin D, to actually activate it, like the amount when we walked from our cars into the studio, that was enough for today.
Are you serious?
Yeah, you don't need much sunlight in order to make it happen.
But it's crazy how there's people that there's days they don't even leave the house at all.
Well, yeah, or you have folks that work like nowadays that work from home, or if they're in like Pacific Northwest and it's overcast for a large portion of time or something, there's some sunlight that gets through the clouds and everything. But yeah,
it also depends on the melanin in your skin, right?
It does. Yeah.
Some people's skins don't absorb as much as others.
If you have darker skin tones and so forth, like
it reflects the sun, which reflects the nutrients, right?
Yeah. So it takes longer in order for to absorb some more sunlight. Yeah.
Was there a correlation between the lack of vitamin D in people and the intensity of COVID?
Yeah, I mean, folks were at that time they were staying home more often. Like nobody was going out.
Yeah,
right? It was like a ghost town. It was weird.
Yeah,
right. And so they weren't going out and getting sunlight and fresh air and things like that. Their diets were pretty crappy.
Yeah,
because it was like they're limited restaurants. So that's when people were door dashing things and everything all the time.
They called McDonald's essential.
Yeah, exactly.
But they shut down the gyms.
Exactly.
Motherfuckers.
Exactly. So you had all that going on. So it was kind of this perfect storm. And then coincidentally found that, higher levels in folks that had vitamin D has some antiviral properties to it.
Antiviral properties from vitamin D.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it's one of the things where they started studying this more extensively. It's one of the great things that came out after COVID. It's like there's studies that were done on different things, vitamin D being one of them. So they found that vitamin D, there's decreased cardiovascular risk, so decreased heart attack and stroke if you have higher vitamin D levels, and decreased risk of viral infections. So, it's one of the if you think you should have a level checked, and then based off that level take the supplement, But that's one of the things in terms of supplements that I take on a regular basis is vitamin D3.
Yeah, I was taking 10,000 IUs at one point, and after I saw you, and I wasn't even in Arizona because when I did my blood work, I was in Washington, but I was in Arizona for a bit before. Anyways, it doesn't matter. And after the blood work, you're like, hey, Shannon, how much vitamin D are you taking? I was like, 10,000 IUs. You said, drop it down to 5, especially if you're, as a matter of fact, you said, stop taking it for the rest of summer and then drop it down to 5,000. Your D levels are good. They're up. I'm like, okay, cool. So if you actually take the supplement from let's call it a viable, reputable source, it helps, guys. It helps.
For sure.
I'm not going to say any names, but there's some places where you can go buy bunch of stuff, big stuff, lots of stuff, they may not have the most, let's call it productive vitamins. But I like the Pure Encapsulations and Thorne, those companies. I like those companies.
Yeah, as do I. They're great. There's sometimes there's different, and I don't know about with those two, for example, but most folks should know. There's just like you have like Toyota and Lexus, right?
Yeah.
Right. So just like you have like the kind of like the one version and then the higher grade version.
Yeah.
So some supplements, not all, some supplements that you can buy off online or whatever versus get through your healthcare provider.
Yeah.
There's some, depending on the supplement, there's different levels of them in terms of like the amount of purity of the supplement.
What's that squirt in your mouth stuff that you gave me? You allowed to talk about that?
Oh yeah, the NMN.
What is it?
NMN.
NMN.
Yeah.
And so you squirt 2 squirts in your mouth. That's it. No more than that.
Yeah, under your tongue. Yeah.
And under your tongue, I'll hold it there for a minute. Dude, that's what does it do, man? Because I feel fired up when I take that.
It's a game changer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's not like steroids or anything.
No.
Right?
No, it's complete. It's natural. It's essential. So in a nutshell, is this okay? Because there's a big debate about what's better, NMN or NAD, all right? And so here's the story. So basically, as we age, of course, we're this giant collection of billions and billions of cells. Okay, so those cells are all aging as well. We're constantly dividing and making new cells.
Right.
But just like photocopy after photocopy, after a while, sometimes that can change over time.
Fuck, the way you just described that was so, yeah.
So imagine that process has been going on now, in my case, for 46 years, photocopy after photocopy, right? And we know like starting around like age 35, those photocopies, a little bit different than what the original really should be.
Yeah.
Okay. So as that happens over time, the powerhouse of our cell, our mitochondria, there's this small chemical reaction that's going on that's absolutely essential. That is really where our energy comes from, and that energy source is ATP. Okay, so in order for that to happen, we need the right amount of NAD around in order for like this chemical reaction to occur and us to have cellular energy that collectively basically gives us energy. All right. So the reaction from NMN becoming NAD is really where the big controversy is, where it's like, okay, well, what's better? Just give the thing that's gonna give the energy source for the reaction, or to give the precursor to it. The way I describe it to folks, it's kind of like, well, do you want the gasoline or do you want the exhaust? Right? So I'm on the NMN side of things, where it's like, here, let's give your cells enough gasoline that they're going to do what they do, and then make the energy reaction occur.
So it helps raise the cellular
Energy level, yes.
Okay, so that's why I feel better since I've been taking it.
Yeah.
So my cells are like, oh shit, we're doing stuff.
You're just giving it what it needs. And so what's great about that is like when you use NMN, which mind you, it has to be good high quality, it has to be a good source. And I prefer liposomal, which is a fancy way of saying already in liquid, so it's under the tongue so it absorbs faster. Because if you take just like a pill version, then it gets broken down in the stomach, it doesn't absorb quite as well, right? So if you do it that way, then you can actually absorb it appropriately. And it's different. Like, it's not like drinking a cup of coffee where you like take it and then you're like, boom, I'm ready to roll. And then you crash a little while later. It's like, you'll take it, you have like this nice, like just steady.
Yeah, it's long, yeah.
This nice steady energy, 6 or 8 hours, then it tapers off, you sleep fine, all of those things, because it was what your body needed in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
I remember when I was down here a while back and I ran out. I was like, Dr. Boyd, I need some more stuff, man. I'm hitting low. And you brought me some.
Yeah.
You brought me some.
Yeah, I usually try to keep an extra one at home just in case. Yeah.
Lifesaver there. Oh, man, we can go all over the place here. So, kind of topic that I need to bring up because it bothers me, man. It bothers the shit out of me. And not nothing more than my love for people, having the best opportunity to be their best selves. And when we talk about this, there's a small percentage of people in the LGBTQ community, the trans community, and they're advocating to get hormone blockers for children because they believe that there are children that think they are one sex or the other. opposing what they are as fact. What's the damage that can be done when you give someone a puberty blocker early on? What is it, if you don't mind talking about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's, and I mean, you look at it this way. We've been through puberty, right?
Yeah.
Right. So it's like you think of like all the changes that our body that happened during that time. That's when you had the majority of your growth in terms of your height, bone, skeletal tissue, so forth. Right. You have like maturity of when it comes to sexual characteristics. Right. So you start growing hair in places and having changes and so forth that occur with sexual development. You have your literally your brain grows, right? So you have like it's the reason why we become more mature and so forth as well. It's like your brain literally grows so that you're able to understand more concepts, more complexity, and things like that and everything. So if you interrupt that process, it's one of the most complex times of life. If you interrupt that process, you're interrupting all these different things that are going on at once. And I don't know about you, but I mean, when I was like, I was pretty immature into like, my 20s, right? So it's like, if you asked me when I was like 12 years old, like opinions and things like that and everything, I'm going to have 12-year-old opinions.
Yeah. Not
adult opinions.
Yeah.
Right. So I find it pretty interesting because the whole transgender conversation, it doesn't have. I don't see where it has to do with. I think people are very, very quick to like throw up the hate flag.
Yeah.
Right. And be like, oh, this is hate, or
they're reacting. They're reacting emotionally and not logically.
Yeah.
So I guess the question I asked was the relevance of puberty, and then ultimately, I guess what I got from that, correct me if I'm wrong, is it's kind of, if you block that as you age, and there's only a window where you have it, like you can't go through it later. It's not like you can put it on pause and decide, oh, I want to go through puberty now. Once you block it, that's it. It's gone. Is it like kind of like a timing thing? There's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of components, moving parts.
For sure. I mean, you have like...
Isn't it important for your heart development, your lung development? No?
Everything.
Everything? So you're telling me that giving somebody a puberty blocker literally robs them of their life that they could be living?
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially. And I'll take that. And so what would your recommendation be to anyone listening to this who knows somebody, or they themselves have a child who is hanging around and associating with people who could be influencing them? Because especially since they're young and malleable, what would you say if someone said, "Hey, Dr. Boyd, should I put my kid on puberty blockers in case they might want to be a little girl when they grow up?"
I think as a parent, it's important to not just enforce. As a parent, you are looking out for the child.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think it's important to not impose, your belief or society's belief. It's what's best for the child. And so that may mean, if you don't have all the resources to get the answer that you're looking for, you keep hunting down those resources until you do. So, actually going and like, for instance, like if let me clarify here, like if you go and you ask, if there's a child who's a boy, say they're 12 years old and they're a boy and they're like, you know what, I feel like I wish I was a girl, right? So that's when it's like actually delving into, well, why? Right? Not just taking for what it is, why? And actually doing due diligence, not just simply, a lot of times, parents will just cater to their children, or go after with whatever the hell's popular on social media because it's popular at the time. I think as a parent, it's incumbent upon you to unravel the knot as to, well, what's the story behind this? And then once that's been done, to actually do due diligence and see, well, what's the next best step? And I think when they do that, I think the answers become very apparent.
I see what you're saying.
As really as what
I see what you're saying. Yeah. So there needs to be some logic behind this.
Oh, tremendous, man.
And there needs to be a very clear understanding of the damage and irreversible damage that can be done, correct?
When we're talking about children, it's protect the children.
Protect the children.
Sometimes that's protecting them from themselves.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's just being a parent. Now, once that child's an adult, very, very different conversation.
Of course.
Now this is an adult making adult decisions that they are, that these decisions are up to them.
I was actually talking with Justin Cross from Earn It All. He used to work for Andy Elliott, and we were talking about that too, that when you're 27 years old and you decide, you know what, I want to be a girl, and you want to chop your ding-ding off, cool. But don't implement compulsion on others to do so just because you did that, right?
There's a thing called Munchausen's by proxy.
What is it?
Munchausen's by proxy.
By proxy?
Yeah. And so to me, it's kind of, when you bring this up, it's a bit reminiscent of that. So Munchausen's by proxy is when a parent will either do things to make their child sick or falsify information for them to be sick, so that now the parent gets sympathy for their always having a sick child. Crazy that it exists.
I was going to say, that sounds like the most selfish fucking thing I've ever heard in my life.
Crazy that it exists. It's thankfully not incredibly common. There's some, I don't remember her name. My daughter was actually showing. There's someone on Instagram or some or influencer now that she had suffered from this, and then went to jail because she killed her mom because of it, and it's all over.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, maybe your guys can search it up and find the name. But I mean, that's a terrible situation. But I mean, at least it's shine some light on it for the public to know about it, because it exists. It's a messed up part of human psychology, but these things do exist. So that's what kind of comes when you bring up this whole thing between a parent basically deciding for their kid to be a different gender. It's reminiscent of this idea where it's someone who is basically overpowering the decision of the child, that's going to affect their health throughout their entire life.
Right. Because outside influence is way heavy on that. And again, it's almost like, oh, I don't feel part of anything. But this tribe over here is like, hey, you can be one of us. You're probably one of us. Blah, 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 blah. And they go, oh, okay, I'm one of you, before they even know what the fuck they're really doing. And then, So that terrifies me, dude. It really does. And it's sickening because, like you said, you just described a lady who basically tricks her children and people into thinking they're sick for sympathy, which is, in my opinion, a form of mental illness.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So, fuck. I just want to reiterate here that, out of love, man, I want everybody to have an opportunity to get the education, facts, real education, before they do things that are just unfortunately a part of our fucking system now. I feel like there's a market for that. There's a financial advantage to people by having that, those procedures and stuff done. I don't know exactly where I heard or saw this, but apparently from the amount of time it takes to go from A to B, transitioning, it costs a lot more money than most people even make in a lifetime. And just to end up going in a direction that you can't revert. You can't revert. So, all right. Well, now let's talk about some good stuff. I was talking to Justin earlier, and we were talking about, we're in a time and a place where we're starting to see this physical fitness trend tick up. And people are starting to come around to, oh, hey, I want to do be in shape. I do want to be in shape. I do want to be healthy.
Yeah.
When to go to the doctor versus when to change your lifestyle. When to change your lifestyle. Maybe I can answer that one. When do you change your lifestyle? When it's pretty obvious that the things that you're doing is detrimental to your lifestyle and you need to let go of some things, right? As far as when to go to the doctor, well, I go to the doctor technically every 3 months, right?
Yeah.
Dude, there's people that don't go to the doctor for years. That stubbornness will get you killed.
Yes, but it's also, it's not their fault. All right.
No, it's not. There are a lot of people that are in situations that aren't their fault. Yeah.
So this is what I mean by this. So it's like, if you look at the way the system is set up, we have a sick healthcare system, not a healthy one, right? So literally the way the system is set up is you wait for something to go wrong, and then that's when you go and you try to get it fixed. So it's a very reactive system.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So this is the reason why, like, you'll have all the time, I used to hear this, where it's like you have somebody who was like, oh, I don't even take any medication. I've been fit my entire life. And then bam, this happened, Well, it's like, well, yeah, it's because nobody's been paying attention for like decades and decades. And that's the reason why bam, it happened, when it could have actually been prevented if you would have found this early on, or done this thing, or not done another thing in order to get there in the first place, right? So the problem is the way the system is set up. And it's the way that we're taught here in the U.S. that this is just how it is. So you look at it, we're very much a worker society. It's very much a 9-to-5 type society, where everybody, they go, they get a job, they have benefits with a job. Part of it is healthcare insurance. They have a couple $100s or more per month taken out of their check for healthcare insurance, right? They don't really understand what they get in the first place. It's kind of smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
And then they end up going, whenever they do get sick, they'll go make an appointment with their doctor, right? They'll go see the doctor. They sit and they wait for hours for the appointment. They get in there, they pay like a copay, and they're like, well, wait a minute, why am I paying a copay? Because I pay every month. So why am I paying this thing now too? Like, what was the point of the insurance, right? They get in on average, if they do see a physician, which is rare, they usually end up seeing a mid-level, like a PA or nurse practitioner, right? So on average, it's 7 minutes is what they have for the appointment time, which if you have more than one thing, good luck getting through more than one thing in 7 minutes. Inevitably, they're written a prescription that they probably don't need in the first place, because there's no way that you can sit there and take an appropriate, like, history and physical in 7 minutes.
Yeah.
So now they're walking out with a prescription of a thing to buy, and then they get a bill afterwards for like, oh, your insurance didn't pick up this piece, and now you have to pay like a couple $100 or something as well.
Yeah, the insurance only covers, but it's so much.
Yeah. So it's like, well, what exactly happened here? To me, it's kind of like you're seeing those shell games where it's like, you put the pebble underneath like 3 cups, and they kind of shift it around, and they're like, all right, where's the pebble?
Yeah.
Right. And that's really like it's this messed up game. So with that going on each time, I don't blame people for not wanting to go to the doctor, because it's like, who wants to put up with all that bullshit in the first place? Oof. Like, it doesn't even make sense, And then you take somebody who's like, like you, right? You got a million different things going on. You're like leading movements. You're teaching people. You're a husband. You're a father. You're all these other things, right? All these businesses and so forth. And it's like, hey, Shannon, I want you to go ahead and take like 3 hours out of your day and go do this. And by the way, it's going to be a really shitty experience too. You're going to be like, forget that. I'll either power through.
I ain't got time for it.
Yeah, it's like I don't have time for it. So that's the reason why like things are the way that they are, is because it's the entire experience is messed up, and people are taught, well, this is just the way that it is, instead of seeing there's other options, right? And the reality is, if you go cash based, which most folks don't even know that it's an option, but when you go cash based, there is no red tape, because you're not getting permission from insurance companies to do things. There's not constraints of time. And whenever, I mean, you could just call or text me.
Yeah.
But I never like said to you like, hey man, I only have a few minutes here, so okay, go. Not once.
No.
Right? Because what it is getting to the result, which is the result of either solving the problem or avoiding the problem or optimization. It's it's one of those three things.
I love that. Like, and I know that I guess I'm blessed and to have you as my doctor, because not a lot of people have access to this type of treatment. But like, for instance, my finger, I had a fingernail that was messed up.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, Shannon, go see this person. And then we started there. Right. It was a specialist right away. And the specialist was like, okay, we're going to do a biopsy. Boom, done. And then I called you and said, hey, they did a biopsy. Here's the results, blah, 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 blah. And then you saw it and you said, and I said, by the way, I'm leaving the state, going over here, so I got to schedule this. And then you found me a specialist over there. You said, now go see this person. Boom. And then we started the treatment. And it's way more painless and for me, and worth it, because again, like you said, yeah, time. And I have health insurance, but I guess it's like a just in case.
Yeah.
I pay for a lot of money for health insurance. It's a just in case. And I also like that if I had to go to the ER for any reason, my wife or my son or whatever, I could call you and text you and say, hey, we got to go to the ER. And then you would call them in advance.
Yeah.
And tell them.
Most folks don't know like that is a thing. Right. And it just makes sense. Right. So it's like, if when you consider what's going on in an emergency room, it's chaos. It's always chaos, right? So that's just by the nature of what it is. So it's like the ER docs, their job while they're on shift is to manage that chaos, and they manage that by managing the board, meaning that they have a board of patients, and there's going to be some people that, on one extreme or another, it's like there's going to be some people that die. There's going to be other people that need to be admitted to the hospital. Some folks are going to need to go to surgery, or the majority of people that go to the emergency room, it probably really isn't an emergency for real. Yeah. And they just need to be like, okay, here's some reassurance and follow up with your primary care doctor, right? So it's like the ER doc's job is to clear that board and to get everybody where they need to go and deal with all the situations.
Yeah.
So if you have your doctor calling the emergency room doctor saying, hey, this is my patient, here's his history, this is what's going on with him,
he's on his way.
He's on his way. Yeah. Then it's like, cool. Now there's a known variable versus an unknown variable. So when you hit the door, if providing there's no like mass casualty event or someone who just came in a car accident or heart attack or something, they can bring you right back. They already have an idea of what's going on. Boom, boom, boom. Do the workup, and that's it. And then you're in and out way faster.
Organization by communication.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, all kinds of good stuff happening here. So you're 46? Mm-hmm. 46, and you have kids?
I do.
You have kids?
I have 2 little girls.
Yeah, I got Eli, my 8-year-old son. When should kids get blood work?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah. The answer is, the real answer is it depends. Because it depends if they're having like some symptoms or something or what have you, But ordinarily, you want to, or you're about age 7 or so. You just want to do a check, make sure everything looks okay. So things like, it's just basic stuff like a complete metabolic panel, which looks at all the electrolytes, kidney function, liver function. You want to check a CBC. So that's a complete blood count. So it looks to see if there's like their white blood cells, their red blood cells, their platelets, and all these things are appropriate. And it also looks at measurement of those cells. And the reason why you want to do those things, and then look at your analysis. And the reason why you want to do these things is it's just casting a net for, thankfully there's not many childhood diseases. Like most kids are pretty healthy,
Yeah.
But there are some things that it's like you want to catch them early. So it's, leukemias and things like that. Pretty rare, but that you can have like, organ failure, kidney problems, things like that. But you can have like urinary things that happen and such in both boys and girls. So about age 7, I'd say. And then you do it again as they're like, going into puberty. So usually like in the teens at some point. Then
how do you? So my kid's 8. He just turned 8. So I should probably do the blood work thing. But like how do you do that? Like, how do you get them down there and then like, okay, we're gonna stick this needle in your arm.
Tough.
They're gonna freak out. Like,
sure.
what do you do? Like,
yeah. A lot of times you don't need to go that far. Like, I told you and your wife, like it's better to have a pediatrician that's going to do the growth curve stuff because they need to make sure that they're growing appropriately. And everything. And usually in pediatrician offices, they have a thing called an iStat, and an iStat's a finger stick.
Finger stick. Okay.
So like finger stick still sucks, but it's not as bad as like getting blood drawn from a vein.
Yeah.
And the reason why you want to do something like that is it's less traumatic for the child, and plus you're checking really basic stuff. So it's like you just do like an iStat, and they literally run it right there, and it prints out the results.
Gotcha. Yeah. I see. That's cool.
Yeah.
Nice stat. And then it gets you the foundation.
Yeah, just the basics is really what you're looking for.
And then if you see something that you might want to check into, then you can do the more advanced.
Yeah, if something's not right. Now, I will say this, though. We live in a day and age where you're starting to see some adult diseases show up in childhood.
What?
Yeah. So, for instance, you're starting to see...
What does that mean?
Like type 2 diabetes. You're starting to see high cholesterol. You're starting to see these things.
Well, that's diet associated, though,
exactly.
Right? Fuck. Here we go, guys. Stop feeding your kids shit. Seriously, don't be a fucking dumbass.
So it's like you'll see, like, sometimes, like you'll see like morbidly obese kids, and you can't get upset at the kid because it's the parents' fault.
Right. Exactly.
They're feeding them all kinds of shit.
Yeah.
And so that's when you can actually like that. That's different. That's a whole other conversation then, because now, like, if you have a kid who's type 2 diabetic. Of course, they need to be like therapeutic lifestyle change, diet, exercise, appropriate education, and so forth, and then blood work until they get like back into a normal range. So that's a very different approach. Oh, it's a messed up time, man. You have like kids going on, need to go on like semaglutide and things like that, like injectable medication, in order to help get their blood sugar under control without having to go on insulin or having to help them to kind of kick things off to lose enough weight, appropriate patient education or parent education and everything as well.
Yeah, and then the stuff they eat that's a hard habit to kick, man.
Yeah, because I mean, when you have food like, most fast food places, it's engineered with, enough carbohydrate and sugar and fat and everything that you like crave it.
Yeah.
And so it's one thing as an adult to like throw in some discipline and be like, okay, no, like this is terrible for me. I'm not going to eat that. Explaining that to like a 7 or 8 year old,
who's been used to eating that.
Well,
in their mind, that's food.
Even worse, that the parents used it as a prize, right? Where it's like, oh, okay, hey.
So they're only motivated by food, and you're creating a bad habit.
So it's like you did great on your math test. Here's your Happy Meal.
Oh, dude.
Right?
Yeah.
So now you have to explain to them, okay, well, they're like, well, I did well on my math test. Where's my Happy Meal? I was like, well, that's not good for you. Here, we're going to...
Turns out it's not really a prize.
Right. So it's like undoing the psychology and the pattern that you made.
Fuck, I've been guilty of that. Not a Happy Meal, but like desserts.
We all have, man. I mean, and that's, and I have as well. And I mean, that's what I grew up with too. It's like,
Yeah, that's true.
I remember...
Fucking McDonald's cheeseburgers were my jam. When I was in my teens, I would eat double cheeseburgers, ketchup only.
It's like you did a good job. Let's go to McDonald's.
No. I didn't even do a good job. I would just get money and go to McDonald's and eat cheeseburgers. And fucking so good. Oh, they were that. But then again, what the fuck did I know then?
Yeah.
What did I know? The food pyramid told me I was eating my grains.
Right.
Luckily, I didn't develop anything detrimental from that. However, I wonder if the quality then was actually better than it is now.
Yeah, who knows, right?
Maybe the quality then was more wholesome than it is now.
I don't know.
I don't know.
we grew up in the day and age of like BPA plastics.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like we didn't know that was a thing.
No.
So if you ate a Hungry Man meal or something, you're
fucking
like,
used to punish those hungry men in the microwave, and then the microwave's like heating it up and rearranging the molecules. No telling what's going on there.
Exactly.
Fuck. Dude, I don't remember the last time I used a microwave.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't. No, I don't remember. I have one in my house, but I don't fucking use it. I use the thing I use the most in my house is a Keurig.
Yeah.
I love my coffee. Sorry, I love my coffee.
I love my coffee too.
Yeah.
And then I had a patient say to me, because he asked me directly, he's like, what do you drink your coffee? I said, a Keurig. He goes, do you ever think about how much hot water is going through that little plastic thing?
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, fuck. I didn't.
Dude, that's a good point.
Yeah. Because I drink, like 2 of those a day or something?
Oh, yeah.
Every day?
Fuck, I love my Keurig. Instant cup.
Yeah. So it's like...
Well, when you make a pot of coffee, like he's like, all right, I don't want to waste this whole thing. And then you end up drinking a pot of coffee, and then you're fucking pissing, and you're jittery.
Yeah, or you get the ratio off, and now it's like, it doesn't taste right. It's too weak, too strong.
Yeah. The Keurig's like all the same, the same. Shit.
This podcast is sponsored by Keurig.
And send me a check. Dude, let's do this. Is there anything on your mind you want like you said, if there was one thing that somebody wanted to get from this, it'd be go exercise. But is there something that you want to say?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. I would say, if you're not happy, to like anybody who's listening to this, and us included, if you're not happy with something in your life, understand that it's because of you. Like if you're not happy with the way you look, if you're not happy with that your body isn't the way that you want it to be, if you're not in the financial place that you want to be, if you're pissed off about your childhood, if you're whatever the case may be, like I spent probably more time in my life and held myself back, like for decades, blaming other people for things that I wasn't happy with in my life. Your health is actually probably the easiest one out of all of those. Like that is like for folks that are tripped up on that, that's actually the easiest part. Undoing the way your mind thinks that's the hard one.
The mindset.
You change your mindset, everything else falls into place.
I talk about that too. Your mindset is basically your mindset's the catalyst for everything to follow. And
the thing is like I think folks have the tendency, and we hang out with a very different crowd.
Right.
We hang out with a crowd where it's like, if you're crying victim, it's like, no, bitch, you're the victim.
Yeah, you're the victim. That's right.
Right? So it's like, if that's a hard pill for most folks to swallow, that they want to put the blame on somebody else. But the reality of the situation is, if you don't like something about your life, it's incumbent upon you to do something about it.
You need to take responsibility.
Damn right.
And, there are situations in a lot of cases where people, we'll call it the demographic in which they're in or whatever. I had a reel about this I posted recently. It's like, if where you're at sucks, it sucks. I'm sorry. I feel bad for you, whatever. But the moment you recognize that it sucks, it's up to you to get out there. No one's going to fucking do it for you. And it's so easy to just suck. That's like the default setting.
Well, the thing is, it's like, it's hard either way. Like, it's hard to suffer. It's hard to be broke.
And it's hard.
I've been there. Yeah. Like, it's hard to be broke.
Fuck yeah.
It's hard to build wealth. So it's going to be hard either way.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you choose the other hard?
That's very true. It's so true. And it goes along with, there's two types of people in the world. There's people that wake up and say, oh, I wish I was rich. And then there's people that wake up and say, oh, I'm going to go get rich. And I chose to wake up and say, I'm going to go get rich. Because then you're not living if you're just sitting around, acrimonious about everything that's going on. And then you think they're going to change for you. It's like people that they want you to conform to their ideology or their lifestyle or whatever. But dude, you can't change other people. You can't force them to be a certain way because you're uncomfortable with how they look, how they talk, how they feel. But what you can change is yourself, and how do you prepare for it, and how do you attune yourself to become the who required to go to places you want to go, to do the things you want to do. It requires effort.
Yeah.
But the hardest part about it is you. It requires effort, but it gets easier. And then eventually it becomes habitual. Like people say, God dang, Shannon, you do so much. How do you do it? How do you do it? And I say, well, first of all, like I'm fucking psycho, man. I fucking love this shit. But I had to get started. And second of all, I'm an offering to the world. Why would I do just enough to get a paycheck to just sit around and watch TV or watch sports and then set that example for my child, like nothing against people who do that. I definitely respect them for at least having a job and doing some sort of productive, constructive action to help society. But man, so many of those people sitting in complacency like that are the reason why guys like me do very well. There's no competition.
Yeah, you look at it this way, and this is going to get a little metaphysical, but it makes sense if you stick with it, right?
Okay.
If someone actually considers that they are so important that God created them truly for a purpose, that they're so important that, each one of us is living our own life individually. If you look at this like a movie, right? So I've been watching you this entire time, right? I'm not watching myself. I'm watching you this entire time. I'm experiencing all of this around me. Like this, it's this very immersive, long movie that's been going on for 46 years, okay? So when you consider yourself in that state, the sky was created for you. These mountains that we saw driving here, this podcast studio, all these people in here in support for you to get your message out. That this was all, what if this was all, this whole thing created just for you so that you can live your purpose, which you're doing right now. And it's that way for each one of us. It's just the problem is from the time that we were little, we were told to be quiet. We were told to, hey, don't be so loud. Speak when spoken to. All of those things. We're taught from a very young age to limit your greatness. And over time, because we feel it, we make up these excuses why it's okay to limit our greatness. So that's why I say I call it out from a place of love. If someone's not happy with where they're at, it's because you're limiting yourself. It's nobody else's fault. Doesn't matter what financial situation you were born into, color of your skin, what your background is. It doesn't matter because you're living this experience. So you get to make it as great as you want it to be. And you have all the things that you need for it already. But you just have to decide to go. So I appreciate you. I appreciate this. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your podcast and share your audience, because out there's going to be at least one person that this conversation resonates with.
There's going to be more than one.
And that it's going to cause them to shift.
Yes.
And when they make that shift, that's when actually change occurs.
That's also why I do what I do, Dr. Boyd. Because, I like money, but dude, money I use as a tool.
Yeah.
I'll stay broke to live this. I will stay broke. I will reinvest in my businesses just so I can get this out there. Because I would love seeing people win. Just like my jiu-jitsu students. Like, I don't make a lot of money off my jiu-jitsu school, but I don't really do it for that. I do it because it's a hobby of mine, right? And then that's me doing my part to help people, doing something constructive. I like seeing them win. When they win medals and stuff, it's like, that's like the greatest thing in the world to me. So the same with people. Like, I'm not just going to limit myself to a couple construction companies and these businesses. No, I want to educate. I want to show people what I did, how I got to where I'm at because of my habits and my skill set, right? And my mindset. And it's really fundamental. It's fucking so stupid easy. On paper, it's really stupid easy. It's not this prestigious thing that's like unobtainable.
Yeah.
It's not. But a lot of people are limited because their association. They don't have people around them elevating them.
Right.
So I want to show people that it's out there. I want people to message me. And you don't have to tell your friends and family I want to be better. I want to go do this thing. Some of them might tell you, no, don't do that. Blah, 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 blah. Don't do that. No, stay right where you're at. Oh, fuck that, dude. You guys, I'm going to look you dead in your eye right now and tell you this. You have a greater purpose to serve.
Amen. Yep.
Bigger than yourself.
Yep.
And that in itself, the pursuit of that purpose is happiness. Healthy, wealthy, happy. Take care of yourself, be healthy, control what you put in your fucking mouth, start letting go to the things that are hurting you because they're dead weight, you're dragging it with you. Makes room for things that are going to help you. The pursuit of that is wealth. And I don't mean, I'm going to become a multimillionaire. Dude, you can have a fucking average job and still be wealthy, especially when you're not doing things that are damaging to your health and to your fucking bank account.
Yep.
Let's get real. So what I'm doing is I'm setting an example for men and women, primarily men because I'm a man, what I do and how I do it, and why I do it, you can do it too. Ain't nothing special about me. There's nothing special about me. I was born just like you were with nothing, with nothing. My mom lived in a 16-foot trailer, You just got to implement action. And stay away from assholes, man, and people who are going to tell you what you should do. I love you. I fucking do. How do people hit you up? How do they follow you on Instagram? What do you got on Instagram?
David Boyd MD is my Instagram.
David Boyd, BOYD, MD, on the gram.
That's my gram.
Dude,
And,
follow his stuff.
yeah, and then on that there's a link to all my other stuff there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. Thank you,
Yeah,
David.
bro. Thank you, dude.
Appreciate you, bro.
Yeah, happy to be
sir.
here.
Yeah. All right.